Glad to have you back. And we are still looking at discussions surrounding Nigeria's existence at this time, the calls for development, for integration, democratic inclusiveness, and of course, the unity of Nigeria, which is, of course, sacrosanct. Absolutely. In 1954, the Electorate Constitution introduced fully a federal system of government to Nigeria after a constitutional conference that held in London in 1953, where it was decided that Nigeria should become a federal state.
Yes, indeed, it completely wiped out every trace of the unitary and regional systems formerly practiced in the country and saw to the establishment of the Supreme Court. Federalism is a system of government in which governmental powers are shared between the central or federal government and its components at state and local governments. Now,
federalism is based on the existence of a society like Nigeria, composed of various geographically segregated groups divided by wide fundamental differences of race, religion, language, culture, etc. Now, one of the strongest points of the 1954 Constitution was the promotion of regional autonomy, which permitted regions to prioritize government and develop at their own pace.
Yes, indeed. Now, specifically, items like arms, ammunition, and explosives, commercial and industrial monopolies, fingerprints, drugs and poisons, registration of business names, police and other security services, census were all under the concurrent legislative lists. Many say that at the very base of the nation's economic, social and political problems is the over-centralization of powers at the center, reducing the component states to mere appendages.
Now, this has fueled the recent push for power devolution in the country. The National Assembly had earlier rejected the move during the recent constitution amendment, but lawmakers say they will revisit the matter soon, and that is what we are going to be discussing at this time, devolution of powers to state. We have Honorable Segun Olulade in the studio with us. He's a member of the Lagos State House of Assembly. Thank you for joining us, and happy independence first off.
Thank you for happy independence, Nigerians.
Okay, so can I safely make a conjecture first off that you are for devolution of powers to states?
Definitely, definitely.
So why would you believe that is the way to go?
First of all, I think we need to understand the practice of federalism, the true federalism that we say we are practicing today. Well, what are the federating units that we should have? In your introduction, you mentioned something like having the federal and the state components like local government. I don't think the local government is part of the federating unit. And that should also be established before we can even move forward. I am expecting that as a state, each state should decide on its own whether to have 1 million local governments.
Or none at all.
Or none at all. No, they should have a local government.
Yes.
They should have a local government, but they should know if they are going to have 1 million, 10, 20,
just like federal
50.
has the power to decide the number of states.
Yes, not the federal government. Even the Constitution of Nigeria gave power to the state houses of assembly to curate, to administer, to fund, to prepare for the administration and all sort of of the local government level. So for me, I think that is where we miss it, and we need to go back to true federalism, where if, for instance, whatever thing we are sharing at the national level, we're sharing it within 36 states of the federation. So if we have the 36 states sharing the money, if Kano likes, let them take the money to 1 million local governments. If Ekiti likes, let Ekiti create 10, 20 local government and share their money within that. But the power must reside with the State House of Assembly to create local government, and that's what we have done in Lagos State, for instance. So, for me, I think...
Which is still not somehow recognized at the center.
And that is where the problem comes in. Because you can't, all the power that is at the national level or now shouldn't be so. They cannot even know what we need in Lagos State. We as a state, we are closer to our people than the federal.
Well, that
So
has
when we
always
talk
been
about
that has been the argument on the part of those who are calling for devolution of powers. But on the other hand, you have those who have this perception that devolution of powers will not be economically, or you know, actually will not be good for states that are seen to be economically not viable.
Well, I'm still in shock when I hear people saying there are some states that are not economically viable in Nigeria. I believe one of the things that have helped Lagos State, for instance, is when the then president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, seized the local government fund in Lagos State. And that brought the ingenuity of the former governor and the leader of our party today, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to look inward and see how to generate more fund for Lagos State, independent of what is coming from the federal. And if every state can take up that challenge in Nigeria today, I don't think we will be where we are. The easiest way to make money, the easiest way to fund their project is when they sit down doing nothing and believing that manna will come from the federal.
All right.
And that is one of the critical aspects of what is destroying the prosperity of the
former
nation.
Vice President Atiku Abubakar accused those from the northern part, because I don't want to generate, of being lazy. That is why they are not in support of the calls for restructuring. Well, former President, his boss, Olusegun Obasanjo, said that state governments that are calling for devolution of powers are somehow selfish because they have the powers already, but how have they been able to utilize the power? Have they been accountable to their people? So you now saying that states need more power. Have they used the ones they have, the space they have yet?
For instance,
effectively?
Yes, I will not say that. I can only speak for Lagos State. I know we have used it to the benefit of the people of Lagos.
Alone.
You said what?
They can't give Lagos alone. The federal government cannot give
Yes, they can't give Lagos
alone.
But like I was saying, if every state will look inward and know that they have nothing to gain from the central pause, but more to gain within their state, nobody will be waiting for anybody to do jack meeting or whatever, or fact meeting at the national. So everybody will concentrate on how to generate fund and increase the IGR in their respective states. But what is happening today is that every month, every state governor, the state commissioner of finance, the state whatsoever will go to the federal to go and beg for money that they could have even generated more than internally. So those are the things that we're looking at.
Now,
when you say...
Sorry to cut you there. When President Buhari approved the first bailout for states, he actually made a statement and said to the state governments, it is time for you to begin to look inwards. To look for alternative means of revenue within your states and achieving IGR and all of that. That's on the one hand, coming from President Buhari.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the body language doesn't seem to be willing to give or cede any powers to the states. What do you make of this contradictory
I won't say that is contradictory. President Buhari has spoken and he has said, look inward, see how you can do it. It is the responsibility of the National Assembly. It is not the responsibility of Mr. President to cede power to the state. It is the responsibility of the National Assembly in conjunction with states' House of Assemblies across the states, across the country. But if the National Assembly are not taking up the challenge, if they are not willing to give power back to the states, then there is an issue. Which
is what they demonstrated recently with the debate on the amendment of the Constitution.
So, and that is one of the things, in fact, what they are bringing to the state. I laugh at times when I see things like this happening, because the National Assembly have that constitutional right to do the needful at this critical period of our life.
But many have said that state governments, if given such a power, could abuse the power at the end
so
of the
the
day.
National Assembly or the federal government can continue to abuse the
and
power.
then the federal won't be attractive anymore because there won't be as much money.
That is the point. The federal should not be attractive as it is today.
So do you think that it's the problem now against the devolution of powers is more political than...
It's more political. It's of selfish interest. It's of people who would not think beyond where they are today. Because one day, every one of us, we're going to leave office and we come back to the people. But the people can benefit more through the state and the local government. But when you don't give that power back to the state, when we continue to list the local government names in our constitution, that is not the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is not what should represent the people of Nigeria. What we need is the devolution of power from the federal to the states and allow states to grow on its own and allow the local government to also generate and be independent, to have that autonomy. And also, it is when the federal government, you can just put it in the constitution that, look, this local government must have autonomy in these aspects. But the states must be given that power to curate, to finance, and to ensure that the administration guidelines for through the House of Assemblies. So must have that power to finance and do administrations for the local government.
So now the rejection by the National Assembly to actually reflect the call for devolution of powers by majority of Nigerians, though there are a few who are saying they're not in support of it. Is it a missed opportunity like it's being described? What do you think is fundamental to that rejection of devolution of powers by the National Assembly?
I would say it's selfish as far as I'm concerned. I think the National Assembly must wake up and do the needful.
Selfish in spite of the fact that...
respect the view of Nigerians.
In spite of the fact that most of the people in the Senate right now were once governors. Who had called for devolution of powers when they were governors. Yes. But now that they're senators, they're not readily...
That speaks volumes. It shows you what I've just been saying, that it's about selfish interest. It's about protecting their office where they are now. If it is about the people of Nigeria, they should go out there and ensure that there is devolution of power. And that is why some of us are even saying, why do we have bicameral? Why not have unicameral legislature?
Deputy Senate President Ike Kuremadu at a meeting with the members of the NGF, Nigeria Governors Forum, made a promise that they would revisit, the National Assembly would revisit the devolution of powers at the floor of the House. But are you optimistic, really, that something possible will come out?
I hope so. I hope they would revisit the matter. I hope what they are sending to the states now can be revisited and we can now have something that Nigeria will be happy about. We have the election around the corner and we must do the needful as fast and as quickly as possible now. And like I said, the issue of agriculture, the issue of road constructions, the issue of primary health centers and schools at primary schools and all sort of things being handled by the federal government, I think is not...
Well, some are even arguing that, look, why don't we face true federalism? Let's achieve that first before we even begin to talk about devolution of powers.
Well, we have to go on break first before we continue.
Yes, of course we will. We will, definitely. We'll take that short break, and when we come back, of course, this discussion continues. Stay with us. Right, you're welcome back. We're talking about devolution of powers to the states. But let's quickly bring you this interesting report by our correspondent in Bayelsa State, Oviateme George, who joins us live from Oloibiri, where he has found an oil well that was discovered in 1956.
Yes, I can hear you quite clearly, though you cannot see me. But with a bit of patience now, here I am. I am Oviateme George saying welcome to Otabagi. This place is called the site of the oil well 1. But let's quickly look at this foundation stone. And if you have a bit of patience, we'll read this together. Oloibiri Millennium Landmark Projects, Nigeria's first oil well, 1956, laying a foundation stone of Oloibiri Oil and Gas Research Institute by His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, on March 2001. 2001? Yeah. This has been here. It's just the foundation stone of the Oloibiri Oil and Gas Research Institute. But not even a shovel, not even sand or wheelbarrow. I can't find anything here. Nothing's actually happening around here. It's all covered by bush. And look at the premises, grasses all over. Now, if this is quite saddening, and maybe you want to say abandoned, then look to my right, and we're going there now. That is what is called Oloibiri Oil Well 1. Here, Shell Darcy, now called Shell Petroleum Development Company, discovered oil in commercial quantity. Today, no drilling activities are taking place here. Why? Is that suggestive of the fact that the oil well has run dry? That I really cannot say because I'm not an expert in that field. But wait a minute, why promise to build an oil and gas research institute when 16 years after nothing has been done? Is it a case of failed promises by the federal government? Sometimes answers are sought in this direction. Well, that is the situation here at Oil Well 1 Otabagi. I am Ovieteme George. It's back to you in the studio.
All right, we had to just throw that in. One failed promise after another. That seems to have been the narrative. Indeed, and it brings to mind,
yes, brings to mind again another project former President Olusegun Obasanjo approved. That was the construction of the East-West Road in 2001. And after he left office, it was discovered that there was no budget for it at all in his budget till he left office.
And they're going to clean up. It's still waiting to be done.
After approval by the president.
Yet. Yes. Okay, now let's come back to the issue at hand right now, devolution of powers. We have barely 5 minutes to discuss this, but let me put this in perspective. Do you think the realization of calls for devolution of powers to the states have to do with the composition of the National Assembly as it is now? Some have said because you have more legislators from one part of the country than the other, then we may never really get any answers to the issue of devolution, to resource control, to restructuring, and
federalism.
You know, and.
Well, I don't think that might be totally correct because we have more legislators from one part of the country. We have listened to some states in the Northwest saying they believe in the devolution of power or restructuring. Especially
the Middle Belt.
And also the Middle Belt. So it's about lobbying. It's about making it plain to all of us what we are going to benefit from it. If I am representing the people at the National Assembly, I must protect my people. I must speak for my people. And that is where the National Assembly is key. And that is why we also need to bring in people to the National Assembly that would defend and speak on behalf of the people they are representing. And that is very, very key to us, for us to have this devolution.
But politics is quite lucrative in Nigeria, and that's why very few really get to House of Assemblies and then the National Assembly, because it is quite expensive for you to even run your campaigns and then get voted in. If you don't have money, even Nigerians will tell you that. I can't vote for you, because the way the Nigerian politics is somehow encourages corruption, and then once a representative gets to office, might not want to, you know, revert to his constituents when voting, because that is how it's supposed to be.
Which seems to be the case.
It's supposed to go back to their constituents whenever they vote, but we don't see this. Even when you hear lawmakers say that, I'll go back to my constituents to talk to them about it, you will never be on record that they did, and then it will always be their own desire whenever they vote at the floor of their houses.
I think that is where the electorate should come in. You see, we should not just leave everything once you have your representative, both at the state or national assembly, or even at the local government, representing you don't ask questions. We need to start asking questions. We need to start putting our legislators on toes so that they know why they are even there. And apart from what you said concerning money, that few people, I don't believe in that. All over the world, there is no election that will not, or campaign that will not attract money. In America, it attracts money. In Germany, it attracts money. Anywhere you go to, requires money. So when
you get to power, of course, you understand what Nigerians are saying, because it opens up an opportunity for. That's why you see, like the common saying, someone is very slim, it gets to power, becomes very fat. You know,
as opposed to other. Okay, now that's a totally different.
I wish you would be very fat also.
But these calls, you know, to what extent really can they be achieved when you have mostly the elite, you know, leading the charge? You say the electorate should come in, but this electorate don't even know how to interrogate some of these things that they you know, your colleagues, the members, the House of Reps members, the senators are calling for. So how can they begin to interrogate these things when they're even not educated to ask the right questions?
Because it seems,
first of all,
the way it is, it seems power resides with the politicians in the country.
Let me say this.
Yes.
With what is going on now, it will shock a lot of politicians if they are not awake to this reality, that a lot of young people out there are now asking questions. And they were mobilizing through the social media also. So you can't just say politics, you see, politics involved. So when you say what happened in 1999 will see happen in 2019, you are joking. So things are going to change. People are getting aware, and a lot of enlightenment are going on. People, the civil society organizations are also coming in. People who are informed are informing others.
But you have a population that is still largely illiterate. About 70% of the Nigerian population. Yes,
the 30% drives the nation. The 30% drives the nation. The 30% make us to have Muhammad Buhari today to become the president of federal
government. Does that 30% want it to remain the same? For it to be 30-70, so that they can continue to have their way? And
on whose side are the 30% that drive opinion in the country? Because when it comes to election year, most of the time, you see a particular pattern, voting pattern almost every time.
Yes, on whose side, I would say, well, it's two ways. One to the people, one for themselves. So it is not the responsibility of the people, the electorate. That's why I'm challenging the electorate to come out and start questioning, start challenging your representative, irrespective of who he or she is. I mean, challenge them and call them to answer questions.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. It's in the hands of the people.
Thank you very much.
The people will have to decide. Honorable Segun Olulade, thank you so much for joining us this morning on TVC Breakfast.
It's my pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the public holiday as much as you can.